What is going on, guys? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today I would like to talk about why I think the New York Jets should use the bye week to trade for a wide receiver. And I know what you might be thinking, wait Matt, didn't they just trade away a wide receiver? Why should they now trade for one? And that is a totally fair rebuttal and a totally fair criticism. Obviously the Randall Cobb not Randall Cobb, excuse me, more on Randall Cobb in a second. The Mecole Hardman experiment, there we go, did not exactly pay off with the New York Jets, which is unfortunate. I liked Hardman. I liked the addition, but I think the New York Jets could still use another receiver. And I understand Xavier Gipson's coming on, but I don't know how I feel about a Randall Cobb wide receiver 3. Randall Cobb is the least productive wide receiver in terms of yards per route run since 2007. He has a 40% drop rate. Randall Cobb being brought in initially when he was first signed, it felt like he was going to be the 5th or 6th wide receiver on the depth chart. That is completely okay. Then Corey Davis retires. Then they trade away Hardman. And suddenly, 5th or 6th really turns into 3rd. And you're going, oh man, this is a real tough spot for those New York Jets. And again, I understand why they traded away Hardman because Gibson's going to be in that role. But Zach could use a little bit of help in the wide receiver room outside of Garrett Wilson. I like Allen Lazard, I do. But the drop off from Garrett and Lazard to Cobb at the wide receiver 3 is fairly significant. What's going on, guys? It is time for more Underdog fantasy selections. For a limited time, Underdog is giving users a $500 match deposit bonus. So up to $500, whatever you deposit, they will match it if you use my code on the screen or linked down below. I'm going to do 3 picks this week. I'm excited about each one of these picks. No Jets, so it's not going to be focusing on just the Jets game. That'll come back later when they return off the bye week. But there are 3 things that jump out to me that I'm going to use. First is the higher on Jalen Hurts, 0.5 rushing or receiving touchdowns. I think he runs one in. I am also targeting Patrick Mahomes, his passing yards. I think he is going to eat up that Los Angeles Chargers defense. So I'm taking 277.5. I will take the higher on that one. And finally, I would like to go with Diggs. I am taking his receiving yards over the higher, rather on the receiving yards at 83.5 against New England. I think Buffalo straight up dominates. So a $10 play will net you $60. Sign up now using my code and make sure to get involved on Underdog. So, all right, who could potentially be available for a trade? Who would be most likely? Someone who seems to want out now is Davante Adams, as he was tweeting earlier today. And I don't know how likely that one is for an in-season trade this year with the New York Jets. Maybe. I mean, obviously, if Aaron Rodgers was here and playing, I think it'd be a little bit of a different story. It would be a big swing, a really big swing, and definitely the most costly option in terms of draft capital going the other way. Out of all the options that are on the table for the Jets, I like it. I would be here for it, but I don't think the Jets are going to take that big of a swing because, let's face it, the second round pick is going to be going to the, as we know, it is going to be going to the Green Bay Packers. So that means the first round pick is really the only thing that you could utilize to trade for Davante. And I don't know if I want to give up a first round pick for Davante Adams. And I don't think it's going for anything less than less than what that second round pick would be. So like a day, or late day 2 pick or 3rd round or day 3 pick. How about I give you 2 relatively realistic options though for the New York Jets? And the first of the 2 realistic options is a teammate. Yes, a teammate of Davante Adams, and that is Hunter Renfro, who really, for whatever reason, has seemed to fall out of favor with Josh McDaniels, and they add Davante Adams last year. Okay. And then they add Jacoby Myers this year, and it just feels like he keeps falling on the depth chart. He had a 1,000-yard season in 2021. It was a big focal point of the offense, and then took a little bit of a step back last year, 330 yards and 2 touchdowns in 10 games. And this year, just 6 catches for 59 yards on the season. He really hasn't been utilized a lot at all. He is pretty much exclusively a slot receiver. As I said, almost exclusively in the slot. Very little does he line up outside, but Some things that you really like about him: good route runner, very, very sure hands. His career drop rate is 4.2%. So if he gets the football thrown his way, he is catching it, which is something that you can't necessarily say about Randall Cobb right now, who's, again, at 40% of drops, 40% drop rate so far this year through 6 games, which is very, very, very high. I don't think this is my favorite of the two more realistic options that I'm going to give you, just because it seems like it would be a little bit redundant to what Cobb and Gibson are. Those guys are pretty much exclusively slots. And I get it. Like, obvious upgrade. Renfro is better than both Cobb and Xavier Gibson. Totally agree. But I just think it's a little bit redundant to what the Jets already kind of have. The last guy, or the second guy of these two that are the more realistic options, I think is the better of the two because of how he would complement the guys who would then line up in the slot, and that is Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. So it seems like the Broncos are ready to go into fire sale mode. They are going to be tanking and in the mix for Caleb Williams, right? It very much so feels like they are in the mix on the Caleb Williams or Drake May train. I think it's probably pretty likely they end up with one of those two guys. They look like a really, really bad football team. And if they're going to trade off pieces, someone like Courtland Sutton, who's the same age as Hunter Renfro, both guys 28 years old, has been really productive this year. 25 catches, 275 yards, and 4 touchdowns. At 6'4" and 216 pounds, he is a big outside receiver and a red zone threat. Something the Jets really, really, really have struggled with so far this year is their play in the red zone. And adding a contested catch guy like Courtland Sutton could help the New York Jets in the red zone, where you kind of just throw it up to him and let him go get it. He had 14 contested catches on the season last year, which was 13th in the NFL, and that would also allow the Jets to put Garrett Wilson inside in the slot more, which is something they really liked to do a lot last year, but they haven't been able to do it nearly as much this year because of the personnel that they're running. If Corey Davis was still here, sure, you have Corey Davis and Allen Lazard on the outside, and Garrett Wilson could line up in the slot more, and that creates a mismatch. And Garrett's been fine on the outside, but a lot of his big plays in his career have come from the slot. So I think it would be wise for the New York Jets to add someone, a bigger wide receiver, who also, by the way, like Lazard can line up in the slot, and Sutton has done it, not a crazy amount, but we're talking like 20% versus 80% on the outside. Lazard could line up as a big slot, but I like Sutton, and he's under contract through 2025, so you probably have to rework his deal because his cap hit's going to be a little bit expensive over the next couple of years. But as we've seen numerous times from around the league, and specifically with the New York Jets this past summer, is you can rework contracts. They did it with Rodgers, they did it with Carl Lawson, they've done it with a ton of different players on this team. They've been able to rework their contracts. So I really like the Courtland Sutton idea. I don't think it would be crazy costly. Like I mentioned, Devontae Adams is probably a first round pick for trading for someone to pair with Garrett Wilson. And sure, Adams is the highest ceiling guy of that mix and has that Aaron Rodgers connection, so I understand it. But I mean, Renfro or Sutton, like, that's a day 3 pick. That's not going to be nearly that costly. And again, my preference is Sutton of the two. I think he would fit this better, but if it took a 5th round pick to acquire Courtland Sutton, would you do it? I think I would. Because the chances of you getting something out of that 5th round pick, while Joe Douglas has shown that he's been able to find guys on day 3, that's not what I'm saying, but when you're able to use draft capital to acquire an already known commodity in a point where you're not rebuilding or retooling, this is a time for the New York Jets to push things forward and try to compete and make the playoffs this year. And hopefully when Aaron Rodgers comes back, either at the end of this year or for next year, you are going all in on a Super Bowl and trying to make this team better. They need more at the wide receiver position. And I think Courtland Sutton would be a really nice add. And even if they did settle, I'll use the word settle, for Hunter Renfro, I'd be okay with that as well. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Should the New York Jets trade for a wide receiver this week? Let me know. I'm Matt O'Leary. Subscribe if you're new. Please give the video a like before you go, and I'll catch you next time.